It's a living, breathing thing, the Assumption Parish sinkhole. More than 200 days after it mysteriously began swallowing up the swamp, hundreds of residents are still under a mandatory evacuation order. As Katie Moore reports, the cavern that caused it is still collapsing, leaving Bayou Corn residents wondering if there will ever be an end in sight.
Where was the water in this pasture?
Oh, you couldn't see the fence post.
You couldn't see the fence post till this opened.
It was like somebody flushed a giant toilet. It's just swirly, 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 boom. It was like, man. And it's incredible the way they open up, because like Josh said, it shoots up in the air and boosh, and the next thing you know, you just see this foam swirl, and it's just going down and down and down.
Wow.
It was amazing how fast the water left.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
The mattress, the bed, everything was actually going down in the hole where the first person had gone, and now the second person is in the hole trying to save the first, and they're not being successful. So he basically just reacted and did what he had to do to get that person out.
How deep did he say the hole was?
It was deep enough that the person he pulled out to safety was not able to fully extend their arms and even reach the top.
The sinkhole is constantly changing. It changes every time we go out there.
Gary Hecox is an engineer consulting with DNR about what to do about the sinkhole. It's uncharted territory.
The cavern was 3,400 feet deep, which is deeper than any known cavern failure impacting the surface in the international record.
Meaning nowhere in the world has a brine cavern this large collapsed, and it's not finished yet.
About this mess here with all this here mess now.
Well, Judge, I loaned this man my house and I willfully included utilities. But then I come back and hooey, he done run up the water bill like something I know was.
Okay, that's not true. You shut your mouth!
Shut your mouth, boy, you in Maine now.
Geophysicists now say the western side of one of the brine caverns is collapsing, filling in from deep in the earth, causing the sinkhole at the surface to expand and contract.
On October 25th, we moved out of our home.
She and some of the 350 evacuated Bayou Corn residents packed a joint legislative hearing in Baton Rouge in recent days looking for answers. Many of the ones they keep getting are conflicting and confusing, especially from the state and the company that once mined the collapsing salt cavern, Texas Brine.
Senator, the cause of the sinkhole is the subject of pending litigation. At this point, I don't think it's proper to have any discussion about what the cause is and whether we accept what anyone has said regarding the cause of the sinkhole.
As wide as this tile. See how it's going around like that? That's how big the hole is. And you're only in this much water.
And we start with the loud boom heard by many and so far explained by none.
That's right. It turns out those booms were heard not just here in the tri-state, but all across the country. So, what is it? Nicole Nisholik spent the entire day asking that question of just about everybody. She joins us now live from the intersection of Green River Road and Lynch with what she found out. Nicole?
Well, and the Vanderburgh County Sheriff tells us that those calls started coming in last night from this area near Green River Road and Lynch Road. And our station has continued taking calls throughout the day. Authorities investigated last night, but people are still scratching their heads.
The sound was like a war bomb.
Stacy Lowry, who lived on Old Coal Mine Road in Newburgh, had just put her kids to bed and was sitting on the couch when she heard it.
A huge explosion. You definitely knew it wasn't a firework going off. Because I've never heard anything like it. It's like very disturbing.
Stacy wasn't the only one.
Yes, I just heard a big explosion. Heard some sort of explosion or something.
Evansville Dispatch got several calls between 9:30 and 11 o'clock Monday night reporting an explosion-like sound.
We obviously dispatch cars. I believe EFD dispatched some fire people. I'm sure EPD dispatched people in the area.
Started Sunday night.
It almost felt like a heavy-duty thunderstorm.
And it gained intensity early Monday morning.
Sounded like a bomb going off.
It was like little tremors.
The house was shaking, the windows were shaking, it was quite loud.
All of the green dots on this map of northeast Clintonville represent where calls were made reporting the unusual noises or shaking. After exploring manhole covers and checking gas levels, the officials called geologists at UW-Madison.
Nothing that I can see points to it being an earthquake.
UW-Madison geologist Clifford Thurber looked at this reading from a seismic station in Shiocton, which is about 20 miles away from Clintonville.
What you can see at that site is evidence that the ground is shaking in an unusual way. It points to some kind of natural phenomenon that's happening not too deep in the earth that's causing the shaking.
The news conference is starting in Clintonville, where they're discussing those mysterious booms. Let's listen in.
As of early this morning, after our informational meeting last night, the USGS, the results of their analysis this morning has determined that on Tuesday, March 20th, the second night of Clintonville's tornadoes, thunderous noises at 12:15 a.m., our community did in fact experience an earthquake that registered 1.5 on the earthquake magnitude scale. It is assigned a depth of 5 kilometers, which converts to 3.1 miles inside the earth. They believe that the event is shallow, but do not know how shallow, and due to the fact that we could all hear such prominent noises, it may be even more shallow than determined.
Dr. Agnew experienced the power of E.L.F. waves firsthand back in the 1980s. He was hired by an energy company to locate oil and gas using the same kind of E.L.F. waves at much lower frequencies to carry out his search. It's a process called earth tomography. But during one particular incident, Dr. Agnew believes his use of HAARP-like E.L.F. waves accidentally triggered an earthquake.
It was in the spring of 1987, we arrived in Roseburg, Oregon, to use our E.L.F. technology to search for oil and gas. Setting up that day, we had a little bit different results than we expected, because the instant that we energized it, there was between a 4 and 4.5 on the Richter scale earthquake that occurred. We were so amazed about what seemed to be cause and effect. We get to an area that has a high propensity for earthquakes, in an area known as the megathrust of the Pacific Northwest. We turn it on, and an earthquake occurs.
Dr. Agnew demonstrates how he may have triggered the quake.
This is a scale model of what the area looked like in Oregon when we scanned for oil and gas in 1987. The strata right here represents the megathrust area underneath the ground. The rock represents the potential energy set up in the ground from a tectonic stress. What we're going to do is introduce E.L.F. waves and demonstrate that it can in fact trigger an earthquake.
In this case, Dr. Agnew is using a stereo speaker to produce the E.L.F. waves needed for his demonstration.
E.L.F. waves, extremely low frequency waves, are just like a subwoofer. In your car, you can actually feel the vibrations through your body. E.L.F. waves are the same way. They vibrate the earth, and at right resonant frequencies, they can have devastating effects.
When the speaker is activated, E.L.F. waves begin to emit. Tiny vibrations in the sand are detected. Then a few seconds later, the rock representing a fault line shifts.
As you can see, in a very few seconds, the resonant frequency built up in our model released the potential energy in the rock. That concussion, on a real scale, would have been felt for 100 miles. These conditions are already set up in the ground. All it takes is the activation energy to make the release happen. This is a small scale, and we're only using 30 watts in this scale.
When Haarp's broadcast array in Gakona, Alaska sends pulses of E.L.F. waves into the ionosphere, the waves get reflected back down and pass through the earth and ocean. If 3.6 million watts of E.L.F. waves were purposely or accidentally aimed at an already unstable fault line, it could, according to Dr. Agnew, cause a tremendous earthquake.
Looking at just simple instabilities, what does it take to create an avalanche? A guy walking across an unstable ice field. What does it take to trigger an earthquake? The right signal coming in when the pressures are already built up and they're at their threshold. That feather, and in our case that hammer, releases that energy.
I first reported at the beginning of the year that the first 3 animal kill zones coincided with the antenna array configuration for the software used by Digisonde receivers that are utilized by Haarp and other such ionospheric heaters. And in this picture, I show the 3 die-off locations are at the 120-degree angle from each other and define the perimeter of the most active region of the New Madrid fault. The Haarp antennas calibrate signals using a 120-degree radiating angle from the center point. The Digisonde computes comparative signal strength along with each ray of the antenna for directional tuning. Picture here, and this pretty much shows the 3 towns that first started off the animal die-offs: Gilbertsville, Kentucky, Beebe, Arkansas, and LaBarre, Louisiana. And it shows the focal point in between the 120-degree area, and it just so happens that that focal point sits right above the most active region of the New Madrid seismic zone.
But there's something else here. We're going to show that later. But anyway, this is Sandy Hook. Now here, you'll see this blue line here is an interstate highway. And this is what the YouTube user I referred to previously was talking about. And here's a close-up of another section of that same area. Look at what it says right here. That says Interstate 35. Well, now, New York does not have Interstate 35. Why would they put Interstate 35 on this map? Well, it's a clue. It's a clue, and it's going to tell us something here, and I'm going to show you in a little bit. Now, here's another interstate full of strike zones. This is strike zone 5. And again, this is an interstate, and look at this right here. You can't see it very well, but it's 65. This is Interstate 65. These are staging areas. This is a checkpoint, according to the key at the bottom of the map. Staging areas, checkpoint, strike zone, and this, of course, is a river. It says Queens River here. All right, let's go on down. There's a close-up showing Interstate 65 is right there, close to the strike zone. Now, here's a map. I'm showing the long stretch from the bottom, from strike zone 1 through 3 and then through 5. And this is a very interesting layout, because if you'll notice, and we can zoom in on these later, the roads here go into the river, but they disappear. It's like, why would the roads go into the river and then disappear? We also have boat tours here. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this represents something else. Now here's the puzzle mystery that a lot of people are missing. There's another interstate listed on this map. This is Interstate 25. And you'll notice that it's right here at the top of Interstate 35. It connects with it, and there's no strike zone in this area. You'll see that there's an arrow that points back and forth, and I wondered about that. What does this arrow have to do with anything? Well, this arrow evidently is showing where people will be able to travel safely back and forth. I mean, that's what the purpose of a double arrow is, right? To show that we'd be able to travel back and forth. Back and forth where? Back and forth between Interstate 35 and 25. Well, as I said, we have arrow going both ways. The meaning of this is that between Interstate 25 and Interstate 35 we will have truck routes after the catastrophe that is to come, and that's what this map is about. It's a warning of what is to come. Now, let's take a look at this. Again, we have Interstate 65 with strike zone 5 at the top. We have a river going all the way down to strike zone 1. There's strike zone 3 in the middle. If this river represents the Mississippi River, therefore these strike zones would represent parts of the Mississippi River. This would be the upper near the Great Lakes. This would be the New Madrid area, or this would represent Louisiana, strike zone 1. Of course, we know what's happening now in Louisiana if you're keeping up with it, which most people are not, because the news media is not following this. They're not keeping up with it. But in strike zone 1, it's obvious that this is representing Louisiana. And in Louisiana we have the Assumption Parish sinkhole in Bayou Corn, which has now grown to 8 acres, and at this time it is bubbling. There is gas and oil bubbling out the size of about an acre. So we're talking about a mega disaster in the process of happening right now in Louisiana. If you live in this area, folks, if you live in within 50 to 100 miles of Bayou Corn, I highly recommend that you leave that area very soon. I believe that it's going to explode. I believe that the sinkhole is going to get much larger, and it's going to be a disaster of apocalyptic portions. And what's going to lead to eventually is the eroding of the Luann Salt Dome. And I'll show you what that is here. And right now, I'll show you that. Let me see. Where is it? Here it is. The Luann Salt Dome is much larger than the state of Texas. And as you can see, it completely covers Louisiana and about 1/3 of the state of Texas. When this salt layer is compromised, and it already has been compromised through frac teching and other means, but when it's completely compromised, then it'll be just nothing but caverns under the ground, empty spaces. And it will be just a matter of time. It'll be like waiting for the earthquake, the New Madrid earthquake. When it hits, not only will the New Madrid area go, but so will a great deal of the Gulf Coast, completely collapsing in on itself, forming an inland sea. That's what that sinkhole in Louisiana is. It is the beginning of this calamity that's to come. And the news media is not following it. At least most of the news media, at least the major news outlets. And the reason they're not following it is because if they did, people might begin to wake up and realize that something is up. For obvious reasons, they're not following it.
We're relieved it's over.
I'm afraid it isn't. Mount St. Helens has erupted again.
We could see an escalating series of events. Quakes, volcanoes, massive sinkholes, gaseous explosions, flooding, and other anomalies.
This sounds more like the coming of the apocalypse.
Nevada is completely overwhelmed. The collapse of Hoover Dam and now Las Vegas. We need to get teams out there right away.
I got your back. All right, let's do this. All right.
A new rift fault is forming in the Midwest that could potentially cut the North American continent in two.
My God!
I'm tired of hearing what we can do. Tell me what we can do.
The devil himself couldn't think of something like that.
Laura's alive, man. You gotta believe that, okay?
What's wrong?
The two largest nuclear reactors in the United States.
Our fault's gotta run straight through them.
We could lose as many as 75 million people.
Then we have to stop that fault from reaching those reactors.
All we have to do is wait for the right moment, provide the fuse, and boom.
I'm tired of hearing what we can't do. Tell me what we can do.
For them, the chaos started on August 3rd when the earth opened up. Cypress trees fell over and were sucked into the water. But that was the result of something bigger that had started months earlier when police on a boat ride first noticed bubbling in the bayou. The slurry stirred up trouble for residents who were forced to leave their homes. Texas Brine began paying them $875 a week for the inconvenience.